Hey, welcome to Conversations with a Therapist podcast. I'm Jennifer Chalo. I am a counseling psychologist and I am a writer, and I am also the host of this show. My work focuses on breaking down complex psychological concepts into practical and actionable frameworks that you can implement today to build a meaningful life. If that is something that you're interested in, then I highly encourage you to subscribe to this podcast and share the link with at least one person in your contact list. You never know who desperately needs to hear this message today, and you could be the person that connects them to a resource that changes the rest of their life. Thank you so much for stopping by. If you have any questions about psychology, then send them to the email address in the description box. With that said, let's jump right into today's episode. This episode is the third and the last part of a series that I had started a few weeks ago regarding some of the things you should consider before you start therapy. The first episode was about things that your therapist wants you to know about yourself before you come to therapy. The second part was about things that your therapist wants you to know about therapy before you come to therapy. And this third and final part is about some things that we therapists wish our clients knew about us before coming to therapy. And if you think about these things before you come to therapy, I think they will be beneficial to you. They will help you get the most out of therapy, and they will also help you understand that your therapist is as human as you are. So humanizing therapists makes connecting with them easier, so that you don't feel like you're connecting to a god, or an expert of some sort. You want to always connect with your therapist as a fellow human being. The first thing that as a therapist I would wish my clients to know is that I am not perfect and I don't have it all figured out. That I struggle pretty hard, just like every other human being. I have my own challenges and I see my own therapist because of those challenges. So as therapists, it's very easy for our clients to look at us and see people who have achieved perfection. When they come to therapy and we talk about some of the skills and the coping strategies that we equip them with, when they come to therapy and we help them deal with childhood trauma or some situation they are going through that has been extremely challenging, the client can think, this person has obviously figured out life. If they know all these things, if they know all these tools, if they have all these tools at their disposal, they're not even referring to a book as they tell me about them. It's very easy for the client to look at you and think you've made it in life. That now you are at the top of the ladder when it comes to mental health, that you have figured out everything and you're 100% well, you do not struggle. I am here to tell my clients that I am as human as you are and I struggle just as you do. So every therapist you meet struggles with almost the same things that you go through. If it's fear, we have our own fears. If it is demotivation, we get demotivated. If it is anger, we get angry. Relationship issues, we struggle with them. Family issues, we struggle with them. We get to go through divorce just like everybody else out there who has gone through divorce. There's nothing unique about us. We get to struggle with parenting. We also spend a lot of time going to our own therapist so that the therapist can help us with our own challenges. If it's addictions, we have therapists who are addicted to things, right? So there's nothing perfect about your therapist. Your therapist is as human as you are. The moment you start seeing your therapist as a fellow human being, they become easier to connect with, as I have said before. Your therapist becomes accessible. Your therapist becomes relatable. Your therapist becomes a human being who can help you walk this journey of life from an objective point of view. Do not think that you're going to find a perfect human being on the other side of the couch who is telling you do this and do this other thing and do this other thing. See them as human, see them as flawed, see them as people who make mistakes just like you do, see them as people who have their own struggles in life and they are only trying to figure out life just like the rest of us. You're the expert of your life, your therapist is another human being. Relate to them as you would another human being and just access them and use the skills and the knowledge they have to better your life. That makes it easier. And it also takes the pressure off the therapist. The therapist does not feel like now they have been put on a pedestal and they need to meet some expectations you already have. It also makes them realize that, they are as flawed as everybody else and they struggle the same way as everybody else, and it is totally okay. And that's why the therapist needs to go and see their own therapist. So it takes pressure off the therapist and it also makes you feel that the therapist is accessible. And so therapy becomes an easier thing to do together. The second thing that you should know about your therapist before you go to therapy is that we don't know everything. Sometimes we Google things just like you do. We Google the issues you bring to therapy. We refer to books. We consult with other therapists. We go for supervision so that we can consult with people who have been in the field longer, people who have experienced more than we do. That's why we need peer supervision, to talk to our fellow therapists for us to help you with the challenge you're going through. So, as a therapist, I want you to remember that I don't know everything. And that's why I encourage you every time you leave therapy to go and read more. I might give you some pointers about some things you can read about, some things you can research, some videos you can watch. But I will rely on you to go and do some work outside of the therapy room so that you can help me help you better. If you wait for your therapist to give you all the things, all the resources that you need for the challenges that you have, you'll find that therapy will take longer than it should, and sometimes it will feel like you can't do things for yourself. And that's why your therapist encourages you to go and read further outside of therapy. Your therapist does not know everything. They never have, they never will. No matter how many years they spend in school, they will never know everything. They will always have knowledge gaps. And that's why therapists keep going for continuous professional development. That's why therapists are always seeking information from fellow therapists, from superiors, from experts in every field, and just trying to consolidate all that so that they can help you better. Remember that your therapist does not know everything, and they need you to be proactive in that sense, that you go and seek more information out there, bring it to therapy, and then therapy becomes a bit more of a collaboration than a lecture. Closely related to that point is that you have to understand that your therapist does not have like a bag of tricks where they get to pull out one trick or another to help you make your situation better. You have to work really, really hard on yourself when you're in therapy and when you're outside of the therapy room. Remember that your therapist sees you for 1 hour in a week. 1 hour out of 168 hours. You have 167 hours outside of therapy for you to practice the things that you need to practice for therapy to be effective. If you come to therapy and you are under the impression that 1 hour is the one that's going to influence 100% the remaining 167, then you're not going to get much out of therapy. You're going to feel like you're lagging behind. It's like you're not getting benefits out of therapy. And that's because 1 hour out of 168 hours, that's very kidogo time. That's time that needs supplementing outside of therapy. And that's why when you go to therapy, your therapist will always leave you with homework. Before you end the session, or even after the session, your therapist will send you some homework to do between the sessions. And this is because your therapist understands outside of therapy is where you will actually be tested. If in therapy you are talking about communication skills and you've been given some tools to practice to become a better communicator in your relationships in your life, and then you don't practice those communication skills outside of the therapy session, then you will never learn those communication skills. Because the therapy room is very controlled. It's a very secure environment. It's a very safe environment. You're not tested the same way in the therapy room as you would be outside of the therapy room. And that's why your therapist needs you to practice the things that you guys talk about in therapy outside in the real world. If in the therapy room, you guys talk about dealing with anxiety, and your therapist helps you understand how to handle anxiety, gives you some coping skills, gives you some breathing techniques you can use in the moment. And then outside of therapy, you are tested and the anxiety comes up and you don't use the skills that your therapist equipped you with, then anxiety is not going to go down. The anxiety symptoms are still going to persist because you've not practiced what you were taught in the therapy room. And that's why we keep saying most of the work in therapy happens outside of the session. Those days between one session and the other, those are the days where you practice everything you've been taught. If you don't practice it, your therapist cannot really help you move faster than you're going. We highly encourage our clients to realize that before you come to therapy, this is a big deal. To understand that we don't have bags of tricks. We don't have things we pull out just to, ta-da, this is the thing you do today, and boom, you're healed. It's important. So think about the work that will need to be done outside of therapy. And as you come to therapy, be prepared to do that work so that you can feel that therapy is effective. Something else that you need to know about your therapist before you come to therapy is that we genuinely care. We are rooting for you. We are on your side. We care about you deeply. We care about your well-being. We want you to succeed. We want you to feel better. We want you to get better. We want you to develop self-awareness. We want you to get coping skills that are applicable in your life. We want you to feel supported. We want you to feel seen. We want you to feel heard. We want to create a safe space within the therapy room where you feel that you can be honest, you can be open, you can be vulnerable, and nobody will judge you. We deeply, 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 and genuinely care about you. And even the days that we challenge you, the days that we call you out, the days that we hold you accountable, the days we tell you about how you are sabotaging yourself, it's not because we are trying to hurt you. I know sometimes it feels painful when somebody brings up the ways that you are getting in your own way, and you can think, this therapist is not on my side, this therapist is just picking on me. I promise you, we are not picking on you. We are on your side. We want you to succeed. We want you to get the best out of therapy. We want you to get the best out of life. So our relationship with you is more like high challenge and high support. We will not leave you hanging. We will not drop you. We will be with you because we genuinely care. And you've been trained to help you handle some of these extremely, extremely challenging things and emotions. And we are there with you. We promise we are rooting for you. We are on your side all through. And you don't have to convince us to be on your side. We are on your side automatically the moment you walk into a room and become our client. I am about to say something that might feel contradictory to what I've just spoken about in the previous point. The thing you need to know about your therapist is that your therapist is not your friend. But your therapist is also not your enemy. So don't spend a lot of time trying to make us like you. The therapy relationship is not a relationship of liking each other. It's a relationship of respect, of trust, vulnerability, care, honesty. It's not a relationship of I like you or I don't like you. Because first you're dealing with a professional, they've been trained to work with you, and there's boundaries within the relationship. So it's not really about, oh, I like you so much. Actually, if the therapist likes you too much for some reason, that can hinder their capacity to be honest with you because they'll feel like they're hurting your feelings. Yet, sometimes you need a bit of honesty from somebody who is an objective participant in your life. Your therapist is not your friend. You can't be sending your therapist TikToks. You can't be calling your therapist to chat. In the middle of the day, maybe you've had a nice lunch and you're thinking, who do I call to talk about how nice my lunch was? That's not your therapist. You don't call your therapist for that. Your therapist is not somebody you call when you've had a hard day. Like maybe you had trouble at work. Unless it's really a crisis, your therapist is not the person you call to just talk about it the way you would call a friend. Because the relationship with your therapist is not a friendship. The relationship with your therapist is a professional relationship. It's civil, it's cordial, it's honest, it's vulnerable, it's safe, but it's not a friendship. And that's why you don't go to your friends for therapy. If your friend is a therapist, you can't go to them for therapy because your friendship is going to blur the lines between therapy and the friendship. And if you're a therapist, you can't see your friend as a client. So I will insist, do not try to make us your friend. Do not try to make us like you. It's not really about liking you, it's about helping you succeed on your mental health journey. Whatever you do, lying, pretending, leaving out some truths, stretching the truth, giving us half-truths, not being open about something, holding back, not being open when we have offended you, when we have upset you, not telling us when something is not working. All these techniques to try to make us like you, they're just making your healing process longer, and they're wasting your time, right? So if you feel there's something that needs to be brought up, something that might jeopardize our relationship, bring it up. We are trained to help deal with conflict and ruptures in relationships, especially a mental health relationship like the one we have with you. So don't feel like you need to hide yourself or hide parts of yourself for us to like you. Something else your therapist wants you to know is that if we meet on the street, we don't have to stop and chat. Actually, we can't talk about your therapy issues outside of the therapy session. So let's say you're out there chilling with your friends at some club and your therapist walks in. As you said, therapists are humans. They also go to those clubs that you people go to, right? So if you're out there with your friends at the club, and then when you're going to the counter to get your drinks, you meet your therapist there getting their drinks, you don't have to chat. You don't have to go like, hi, how is everything? How are you doing? You don't have to do any of those things. Why? Because your therapist is not your friend. So it's okay for you to acknowledge them if you want to, but it is not mandatory. If you choose not to acknowledge them, that is totally fine and acceptable. Remember, as a therapist, I don't want to make you uncomfortable. I don't want you to have to introduce me to your friends because suddenly you've stopped and you've started chatting and you're hugging each other and you're like, oh my gosh, it's been a minute sijakuona tangu last week, how is everything? I don't want to put you in that situation where at now your friends are going to be like, hey, how do you guys know each other? As a therapist, I want you to feel comfortable. No therapist is waiting for you to acknowledge them and start introducing them to your friends when you meet in social settings. You don't want to have to introduce your therapist. At now, guys, this is my therapist. And guys are like, hey, we didn't even know you were going to therapy. Maybe you've not told them and it's something that you still want to keep personal and private. Your therapist does not want to put you in a situation where you have to expose yourself in that way. When you meet your therapist in the streets, it's okay for you to acknowledge them and move on. You can even do a head nod or a wave or something, You don't have to go there and shake their hand. And outside of therapy, your therapists cannot talk about therapy issues with you. So you can't meet and be like, guy, do you remember that thing I was telling you last week? What? It happened yesterday. So this is what happened. This is how it went down. Or this is how I applied that technique we were talking about. That's not something you and your therapist will talk about outside of the therapy session. Again, to maintain confidentiality, to maintain your privacy, your therapist is not expecting to interact with you like that outside. And especially for people who live in very small cities, in very small localities, you will stumble upon your therapist. And that's why I keep saying, your therapist is not expecting you to go out there and not just start saying hi to them and hugging them and introducing them to the people around you, buying them a drink, telling them, let's dance. That's not how it operates outside of the therapy room. And you can't bring up therapy-related issues that you've already discussed in session. Last but definitely not least, something that you need to know about your therapist before you go to therapy is that for me as a therapist, working with you helps me become a better therapist. And it helps me serve the next client better. And that's why, even for some of the clients who have worked with me, they know that I will give you a feedback form. I will ask you about your experience in therapy. I will ask you about your time in therapy. I will ask you about our relationship during therapy. I need you to be honest in that feedback so that I can become a better therapist and so that I can serve the next client even better. If you don't give me honest feedback, if you feel like you need to sugarcoat your experience just to make me feel good, then it's going to be a disservice to the next client that I see. And that's why, as a therapist, we highly encourage our clients to tell us what is working, what is not working. When we go wrong, we highly encourage that you tell us. When we offend you, when we say things that are wrong, we highly encourage that you correct us. When we say things that are hurtful, we highly encourage you tell us. When we do some things that are not effective, highly encourage that you tell us. Please give your therapist honest feedback. Let them become better. If something is working, tell them. If something is not working, tell them. If there's something you need, tell them. If something is off, tell them. Don't hold back. Don't think that your therapist is going to get angry with you for giving them honest feedback. Because if you don't give us that feedback, we really can't get it anywhere else. Remember, therapy is very isolated in the sense that in the therapy room, there's just you and the client as a therapist. So if there's just the two of us, me and my client does not give me the feedback, there's nobody out there to give me that feedback because I don't know. I will only know about how good I am as a therapist from the feedback I get from my clients. So as a client, please tell your therapist the truth. Please be honest with them. Tell them, even when it feels uncomfortable, tell them. They will create room for you to be able to be honest, to be able to bring up difficult conversations. So I hope this has been helpful. I hope you've learned a few things about the inner workings of the therapist's mind, and that you know some of the things that you should think about as you go to therapy. I will close with what I started with, that your therapist is human, that your therapist struggles, that your therapist experiences all the human emotions that you experience, that your therapist goes through the same challenges that you go through, whether it's addiction, loss, fear, anxiety, depression, divorce, childhood trauma, poverty, financial issues, bankruptcy, all these things, your therapist goes through them. Humanize your therapist, and it will make your therapy even more fruitful. It will make your therapy even more effective.